Chapter 3 starts and we start on the same way we start all of our chapters. By gambling in the arena. Noish gets past the first few rounds but refuses to trigger a critical, and so dies to this random ass Armor Knight. And then, since we got Deirdre back for like 2 seconds in this map, we put her in the arena for old time's sake. You know, considering how little she was in this run, I think I got pretty good mileage out of her. Eventually though she loses an arena round, and so I sell all of her stuff as punishment. She can't leave the castle, and I won't be able to use her after the next castle, so I figured that I'd give all her money to Sigurd, who I can't use the entire game. It was nice knowing you, Deirdre, but sadly I got a run to finish. Loon has a pretty good arena too, but sadly he doesn't make it past the Dark Mage. Why do they even have a Dark Mage in the arena? This guy is literally evil. Shouldn't you guys be like canonically burning him on a cross or something? But anyway, the big moment that all three Noish fans in my comments section were waiting for. The Brave Sword conversation. Holin tries to buy Ira's love with the Brave Sword, and low-key it kinda works. But obviously, I can't use Ira. So the Brave Sword will sadly go to the literal only other person that has B-rank swords for some reason. Noish. Well, actually I could have given it to Ethlin, but I already know you guys would kill me in the comments for doing that. So it's whatever, I guess. Lex is low-key our best unit and clears most of the arena by himself. But I don't want to risk him getting low on the Dark Mage, and so I stop his arena early. We then do Du's arena, and it's actually kinda hilarious seeing how he can sorta hold his own out there. But just as I praise him, he gets a blank level. Yeah, flip this guy. I stop his arena because I don't want to get him too low considering 2 of our units are already at 1 HP. And, well, actually 2 units and Sigurd's wife, whose assets and life savings we stole. The enemies on this map are split into 3 sections, and so I head off with Lex to the right. As said before, I can literally solo entire groups of enemies with my current guys, so unless I do something really, really stupid, I shouldn't be in any danger. You see that? That's called foreshadowing. Lewin gets healed up by Aideen, and we then start sending out the rest of our guys. Our turn ends and the armors to the right advance on Lex. Yeah, they're not exactly scary, but at least this saves us time reaching them. We send Noish back to the castle and finally give him Ira's Brave Sword, and we then take him to the arena for a test ride. You guys have been hyping up this man for the entire run for when he'll get the Brave Sword, so let's see what he can do. Yeah, you wanna know the cherry on top? Aideen gets a blank level from healing him. I'm starting to think that all blonde people are just inherently evil now, not gonna lie. We sent Ethlin and Quan to the left to have them confront the Lance Squad, and the rest of our army heads north. The armors Lex are fighting do 1 damage each, and the boss doesn't fare that much better. Lex can honestly sorta solo this map, not gonna lie. In fact, if I didn't have him play goalie last chapter, he probably would have soloed that map as well. Pirates continue to burn villages, and we begin our walk towards the enemy at a brisk pace. Lex kills the enemy commander, and proceeds to make haste for the villages. I decide to march Quan on to the left alone, because he's low-key goated like that. And Ethlin and co continue north. The Northern Armor Squad merges with the Bow Squad to create a giant pool of enemies, and Quan begins his genocide of the Lance Squad. On player phase, Ethlin chips down on an armor, and Noish follows suit with the Brave Sword. And he actually gets a crit. Huh. That's weird. Something's off. He actually just got a kill there. But anyway, after that kill, I realised that Ethlin didn't have quite enough range to canto far enough out of the enemy lines. Maybe I should have just used the light brand instead to chip, but whatever. After all, she does have both the skill ring and the magic ring. There's no way she's in any real danger. Quan takes out the enemy commander of his squad, and Lex saves a village. The enemy phase comes and, well, Ethlyn gets hit by a 28 from an armor. Well, she dodges the next one, but then the Armor Knight Commander comes in with a 52 from a steel bow, which she doesn't dodge. Huh. And now I have to deal with the Armor Knight Commander's leadership stars. This might be tricky. Ethlyn's almost in lethal, but I mean, come on, Noish is there. With a face as stupid as his, what enemy in their right mind wouldn't just attack him? And see, I was right. Noish gets hit by a 57. What'd I tell you guys? Ethlyn's fine. Oh. Huh. Another cav aimed for Ethlyn instead of Noish, even though a space to attack him was free. Well, at least she can dodge. Oh. She is now officially in lethal. But there's only like 3 enemies left, so we should be fine. The next one aims for Noish and misses, and there's only 2 left. All she needs to do is dodge a 48. Oh. She's dead. Everything was going so right, I didn't even bother calculating damage or hit rates when I moved Ethlyn. And now she's dead. And she can't actually come back for the rest of the run. And once she leaves, she takes Quan with her. And they can't be resurrected by the Valkyrie staff for plot reasons. So she's not coming back. And it's, once again, all my fault. My grievances don't have time to simmer or settle. The enemy turn ends and I've lost 2 of my best units. And, as I've already said, it is entirely my fault. Remembering what happened to Arden, I figured that we won't let the enemy general that attacked Ethlyn go. Letting him live will only bring reinforcements. And so, we do a suicide run. And I send out Lewin straight for the boss's head. If I can just take out the enemy commanders, I can get rid of the leadership stars. And so, I initiate combat, and no skills proc. I only wanted to sacrifice Lewin, but it seems that Noish has drawn the short end too. With no one else in range, I send him out to commit his final contribution. And he finally killed the boss. And he got another level. Now look, he's level 19. And only has 9 skill. Isn't that funny? Well, I guess he's close to promoting now, isn't it? But knowing what's about to happen to him, I don't feel very happy about it. Everyone else falls back, and Lex continues making his way to the enemy base on a solo mission. We'll have to fend for ourselves until he comes back. Oh, and we'll also have to deal with Quan's leftover cavs, won't we? This is probably gonna be the longest enemy turn we've had since Arden, isn't it? Noish gets hit by the first 47 and doesn't trigger any skills. Funny how when everything's falling apart, he's still the same Noish. Lewin then gets hit by a 37, but it seems he retaliates with an adept proc. Huh. Nice level, Lewin. Sadly, I don't think you're gonna make it home to use it, but hey, at least you're going down swinging. Noish then dodges the armor and retaliates, but again, no skills proc. Please just once before you die, Noish, please just trigger something. Next, a bow cav initiates, and Noish gets hit by a 67. Now you've got to be kidding me. The next cav targets Sylvia, but she survives. And then Noish is at lethal with a bow aimed at his hollow noggin. You know, I've joked about moments like this, but now that it's really happening, I'm starting to regret all the things I've said. He was so close to promoting and hitting puberty, but he just didn't really make it. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm sorry, Noish. This wasn't really your fault. You were just unlucky enough to be the closest to the boss is all. If I could have sent out Dew or Latches, I would have, but I just couldn't. I really wanted to love you, Noish, but I just couldn't keep you alive. I'm sorry. And with his dying words, he wishes me good luck. Maybe I should have treated him better. Yet again, there's no time for us to grieve or process what really happened, as Lewin gets struck by a 34 and is now at a literal 2 HP. And now, with the enemy Cavalier boss targeting him with a 40, any hope of surviving goes down to the same place as Noish. Except Lewin had other plans. He dodges the 40 and counters with both an adept and critical proc, meaning we've wiped out the enemy commanders whilst holding on to a literal inch of our lives. And finally, player phase arrives. But we're not home free yet, as Bocav surround us and Lou is on the verge of death. Dude takes out one Cav whilst blocking a choke point, and we need to make a critical choice. We need to heal Lewin, but doing so would require one of either Aideen or Sylvia taking a bullet for him, and, well, most likely dying in the process. Or well, actually most definitely dying, cause they ain't making it out of this alive. Now why can't Natchez just heal him? Well, that's cause she's guarding our base, and Lex is still miles away from home right now, so we kinda just gotta thug it out, not gonna lie. Lex continues his side plot of soloing the enemy castle, and they low-key have hands. They got both mages and a staff user with Fortify, so this might actually be a challenge for him. Sylvia ends up biting the bullet and acting as bait, as she uses herself as a meat shield. I chose her because she's more likely to dodge than Aideen, and she does make it past the 52. If I get a bit lucky, no one should have to die this turn. The second out of the third bow calves that can reach Sylvia target her and miss. 2 for 2. Now I just have to hope for the last one to miss and... that makes the third casualty this chapter. And a fourth knocks towards our doorstep as 2 lance calves aim their spears at Du. If Du falls, so does our choke point guarding our home castle. But he dodges. Both of them. It's as if all the negative energy I pointed towards Noish was somehow repelled and converted into positive energy, and then it latched itself onto the nearest blonde. Maybe Noish didn't die for nothing. Then, I realized that Lex Loki ain't built for rushing a castle full of mages solo, so I killed an armor and retreat, and then we come face to face with our troubles at home. A gaping hole is left in place of Sylvia, and we can only close this gap with Lewin. But then 5 seconds later I decide to ditch the choke point, and now Du and Aideen flee for their lives. And Lewin? Let's just say that I'm willing to bet his life that he probably can't dodge all these calves. But with our moves exhausted, we tense for our next death, and this one's royalty. The enemy castle regroups and reforms, and Lewin welcomes his last turn with the same dumb smug smile on his portrait as always. Even if he lives, he'd still be surrounded by enemies that can outnumber and lynch him on the next enemy phase. Is what I thought, of course. Lewin dodges a 34. That's normal, I guess. Nothing major. But then, he triggers Adept. Well, there goes the first Bocav, not like I'm complaining. The second Bocav initiates, and this time Lewin fails to dodge. Guess it really was just a fluke. Except not. He triggers yet another Adept proc. Something's up. The third and final bow aims at Lewin, and misses. And Lewin triggers Adept for the third round of combat in a row. And not just that, he gets a level in both defense and speed. You know, the exact stats he needs to live right now. It's as if all the unborn critical and charge procs from Noish, by law of entropy, dispersed and found itself a home in Lewin. Even with his body firmly planted into the ground, Noish saved Lewin by absorbing all the bad RNG onto himself. He was a hero, I just couldn't see it in time. Mages close in on us, and the last Cav suicides into Lewin. Due to Noish's Force Ghost guiding the RNG, Lewin lives to tell the tale and gets healed by Aideen. And since he's basically now our main DPS, he goes on to solo the remaining Armor Knights that are standing in front of our front yard. I plant Lex near the castle to hopefully act as a sufficient bait, and we can play the long game now with our home castle devoid of any immediate danger. Despite his phenomenal bulk, Lex sorta is facing off against an entire enemy castle by himself, and so he does need to retreat for some healing. He of course continues to bait and chip away at the remaining armors as he retreats, but he does make sure to avoid the range of any enemy mages. Du swipes a kill, and then gets a level on the last armor, and Lewin goes off to face the enemy mages while the rest of our army tails behind him. The sword armor in range of Lex approaches, but doesn't attack, which is quite interesting. And Lewin enters a magic battle in a forest with some weird guy with a cloak. The accuracies are evenly matched due to Lewin's disadvantaged tome, but Lewin does trigger Adept, and misses. And the rest of the enemy mages continue their approach. On player phase, Lex snatches an enemy mage from the advancing castle force, and Lewin switches tomes to help him with the western enemy mages. Aiden moves towards Lex, and Du and Latches remain on standby for Lewin. On enemy phase, the armors once again close in, but don't actively attack Lex. Of course, save this one guy with a javelin. And Lewin solos by killing the enemy mage he lowered on player phase, and then triggering critical on the next one. He weakens the next two, and then a lone mage gets baited by Du. Now's probably a good time to mention that there's absolutely no way we'll save these villages from getting plundered. So yeah, we're gonna be hella broke for the rest of this chapter outside of Du shenanigans. On player phase, after several turns of retreat, I decide to say flip the healing and march Lex directly into the enemy after killing the last mage. And Du and Latches 2v1 an enemy mage. And finally, Lewin follows up by killing the enemy mage commander. We survive the enemy turn with little to no issues since the enemy armors refuse to attack Lex. And this is the part of the map where I start to worry about the enemy boss, cause this man has a bolt sword and our strongest guy is an axe user. But hey, we'll deal with him when we reach him. Lewin finishes off the last enemy mage with a crit, and Lex finally goes home to get in some healing. But interestingly enough, the second we do that, the enemies actually disengage and retreat away on enemy phase. Lex beelines the retreating force to stop their escape, and this time I use my brain and equip him with a hand axe, so he chips the enemies that close in on him. Du and Lewin then clean up the strays, and Latches gets a level from healing. Lex then one-rounds the defenseless enemy priest, and earns himself a glorious 1 HP from a level. And we start disassembling the enemy armor knights. Lex takes a pit stop to take care of the enemy ballista, and we go back to soloing the rest of the armor knights. Lewin gets a majestic level up from cleaning up strays, and long story short, the armors are all dead as well as the ballista. Du got a strength level from killing one, and nothing much else really happened. With the rest of the enemies cleared, we begin our assault of the bolt sword guy, and Du steals his lunch money off with a 50. Pretty nice. Oh, and Aiden also levels up defense from healing. Pretty cool. And to finish off, Lewin attacks the boss with the magic triangle advantage, and triggers the legendary combo of Adept plus crit. And then the boss is no more. And so, we stop prepping to seize the castle. Lewin returns home, and does the rematch of a lifetime against the dark mage that ruined his arena earlier, earning himself a much deserved level. The pirates wipe out the last of the villages, and we proceed to seize the next castle. We learn that apparently Sigurd's dad killed the duke or something, and then Lewin watches from not so far as Sigurd's wife gets kidnapped or something, so not much really happens. And just as we catch ourselves a break, we also catch ourselves a massive problem. Eldigan. I don't want to fight this guy. And no, not just because he's Sigurd's friend, but because his missile taint can potentially one-shot any and all of our units. Typically you'd get Latches to get close and talk with him, but we can't really do that in our situation, because we only have like 5 guys. So yeah, my strategy becomes to sneak Lex past the Cross Knights whilst the rest of our army hopefully dies slowly enough against Eldigan. We set Lewin as our goalie, and Du stays close as a potential distraction, whilst the rest of our guys follow Lex. But of course the enemy just can't make it easy for us, as they redirect themselves towards Lex, which is actually a blessing in disguise, since it means the rest of our units can sneak past the Cross Knights and take down Chagall. But our only real combatant is Lewin, so we're in a bit of a pickle here. But oops, the enemy changed their mind again. They're heading for our home base. I double down on using Lex as bait, and this time I advance the rest of my units even slower towards the enemy castle. They once again decide to follow Lex into the woods and, low-key, yeah, Lex is dying tonight if he decides to stop moving. He's only one square shy of being in range of a Cross Knight, and he's stuck in a forest. But he's doing us a huge favour by trapping these guys in the forest, which was a genius play that I totally intended. The Cross Knights proceed to tail Lex like a group of politicians when they see an unattended miner, and Lewin starts to break through the enemy's defensive line. We clean up 2 Armor Knights by the time the Cross Knights reach outside of the forest, and it's not looking good, not gonna lie. I treat Lex as if that helps, and Lewin triggers a critical, which actually does help, and we now have to fight even more Armor Knights. Yay, do you hear that, guys? We get to fight the class known for being big and bulky, whilst we're being chased down by a death squad. What fun. The castle we just seized gets unseized permanently, and we now have an entire group of cavaliers right at our unprotected home base. A home base we can't actually defend, so how do I survive this? Well, I decide to further retreat Lex whilst Lewin pushes the offense. But what about the home castle, you may ask? Well, I don't flippin' know, okay? Do you have Eldigan right outside of your house? I didn't think so. Now stop asking so many questions. Dew becomes my new go-to bait, as I throw Lex into battle as a desperate ploy to seize the enemy castle. And then, by some miracle, the Cross Knights decide to aim for Dew instead of the empty home castle. Huh, maybe these guys really are politicians after all. Lex further pushes and so do the Cross Knights. But my god, these trees are doing half the work, because otherwise we'd be super dead right about now. Now you see this right here? This is why we're against deforestation, folks. Who cares about stuff like loss of natural habitats and global warming? I just need the trees to beat this one map in Fire Emblem. We almost have the exterior enemies completely whittled down with Lex, and can soon advance on to Chagall. But we soon then encounter an issue. Lex only has 4 Brave Axe uses left. Yeah, he's gonna need to head back for a refill, so this kinda cooks our plan, not gonna lie. The Armor Knights are almost dead and so is Lex, but thankfully his job's done so he can go back to baiting the enemy Cross Knights. Dew and Lewin finally finish up on the armors, and the Cross Knights are almost outside of the forest. And now all that's left is Chagall, the same boss we were bullying last chapter. He hasn't improved much, but he does have access to 1-2 range thanks to his tome. Lewin goes in, triggering an adept proc, but he also gets hit by a sub 40. Which is a bit of a piss take, not gonna lie, but hey, we're getting there. One major issue with Chagall is number 1, he has 2 range, which I just said, and number 2, his health gen is actually a problem for us if he stalls long enough for the Cross Knights to kill us. And as I say this, he lands yet another hit on Lewin, so that sucks. Lex goes on to act as bait, and Aideen heals Lewin. Unless you didn't realise earlier, the relatively high staff rank and good healing is why I picked Aideen over Sylvia. That just can't fully heal, and couldn't really suffice as that primary staff user. We initiate with Lewin, and on comes our 3rd issue with Chagall, Pervice. Combine this with his healing, and killing him here is a genuine struggle since we're on a timer. And to make matters worse, Eldigan and Co finally realise there's more to life than just chasing circles around Lex, and they don't take the bait. So now, we're in the end game. Chagall initiates on Lewin, only to miss a 33 and then get countered by an adept proc. Every one of these adept procs you're seeing right now, yeah, that's thanks to Noish. We initiate with Lewin and Pervice. Yeah, things aren't looking the slightest bit good for us right now. So we have Lex full advance onto the enemy Cross Knights to buy us a few more precious turns. So, it's now or never. Lewin initiates once again, but 3rd Pervice in a row? Despite this, he does break even with an adept proc, albeit at the cost of some HP. Lex continues being the realest of homies as he draws away the enemy Cross Knights towards our extremely vulnerable home base, and Lewin gets 2 clean hits on Chagall with an adept proc, and now reaches level 20 in the midst of combat. Then, on play phase, it's all over. Fun fact, Loon actually killed Chagall in both of his appearances. Funny. But anyway, we seize the castle and do something I always wanted to do as a kid. I seized Sylvale without killing Eldigan. But unfortunately he and his knights just disappear into the void anyway. But with all that noise settled, we can warp Loon home for promotion and breeze him through some arena rounds. Even if we had lost a good 2/3 of our army this map, and almost softlocked ourselves, I still think we have a fighting chance for this challenge, to be honest. The Urugate Hill pirates turn on Bridget and start to pursue her. And what do you know, she has pursuit, so we'll have to leg her to the Tower of Bragi to keep her out of the enemy's reach, and then we should be fine. After all that time, and effort, and energy, and hours spent grinding and editing videos, this is how it ends? I wish this was some sort of funny fake-out joke, but it isn't. Yes, you saw that right. Bridget, in her first turn of living, is forced to undergo combat with a pirate that has a hand axe, meaning that a unit with the pursuit skill had just initiated combat. And thus, we can't actually beat this game without the skill. And for once, it's not actually my fault. This is something that is impossible to manipulate, since it happens on enemy phase before we could even move Bridget, meaning that the game was rigged from the start. Everything we just spent God knows how long talking and playing through, it was all pointless because of a flippin' forced encounter. So yeah, the answer to the question that I asked a year ago was simple. No. You cannot beat Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War without the pursuit skill, and it's for the dumbest reason possible. But I don't mind this outcome as much as I did originally. To break the fourth wall for a bit, challenge videos are highly oversaturated, particularly in Fire Emblem, and due to the heavy relevance of RNG in this game, the answer to whether or not you can beat a game with a certain handicap is 9 times out of 10, yes. So even if I did waste well over 100 hours of my life on a challenge I couldn't complete, at least it was more interesting than what else you'd find on YouTube. And hey, according to Shozo Kaga, Fire Emblem was always about creating your own story and dramas based off the game's permadeath. And honestly, I'm beyond grateful that I had a chance to share mine with you. It really does mean the world to me, and no, I'm not just saying that. So to everyone who stuck around to the end despite my godforsaken upload schedule, thank you, and I'll see you later.